are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar on student employees from fresh faces to department experts. My name is Beth Rugg from Ithaca College in upstate New York. I'm the Professional Development Coordinator for SIGUX and will be helping to facilitate this webinar. Mark Zucker, Student Technology Services Manager from the University of San Diego, is the main presenter. Before we jump into the webinar, let's go over some information about how GoToWebinar works. By default, all attendees are muted. This helps prevent any unwanted background noise. When you have a question or comment, you can either raise your hand and I will unmute you, or you can send a question to me, the facilitator, via chat. So right now, just so everyone can see how it works, can you please go ahead and just say hi to me via the chat window so that everyone can see how it's working? Oh, it's so welcoming when everyone says hi. Thank you so much. We are recording this session, and it should be available in the next couple of days on our SIGUX website. So with that, I'm going to turn the discussion over to Mark. So go ahead, Mark. It's all up to you.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate that great introduction. And hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon to you. So like Beth said, my name is Mark Zucker. I work over here at the University of San Diego, managing student employees at the ITS Help Desk. I've been managing student employees for probably almost a decade now, and I've been able to kind of glean a lot of tips and ideas, and I'm hoping that some of this will be useful for you. We'll go over a bit of what I do here at the university, as well as some lessons that I've learned over the years, but we'll hopefully have some time for some questions at the end, and we'll have some resources available for you in case any of these ideas are things that you think will stick. I'm trying to gear this for people who are either just starting with student employees, starting to manage them themselves, or maybe just looking for some extra tips as you go along. So hopefully there will be something for everybody, but you can always just email me or contact me afterwards if you do have any sort of follow-up later. So a little bit about USD. USD is a private Catholic university over in San Diego. It's been founded in 1949, so we're a little over 60 years old. About 8,000 undergrad and graduate students. Really kind of a focus on a business school and art school. We have a very small computer science and engineering department. About 1,500 faculty and staff, and we are consistently one of the top 10 beautiful campuses in the United States, and actually #1 for participation in study abroad. Over 75% of our students will spend at least one semester somewhere else, I guess just to see if there's any places that are more beautiful than our campus. We're very proud of it. I don't know if you know this. So our ITS Help Desk, we employ anywhere between 20 to 45 student employees. It's very seasonal. We'll have a lot of student employees that are here for move-in weekend. Then we'll scale back to semester employment between 25 and 30. These students are responsible for all student support at our campus via phone, via web, and in person. They back up our faculty and staff support. They help augment the ITS Help Desk. We have a tradition here at the University of San Diego of providing white glove style support. So we're out in the residence halls helping with things that sometimes don't even feel like they're technology or IT related, helping get their TVs connected on cable, even though it's just plugging in the wire and going through the channel programming, or occasionally helping haul boxes or drive people around when it's the Net Week move-in weekend. So anything we can do to try and make USD seem like a great place to be. So I've put on here a small chart just so you can get an idea about our structure. So you can see at the top here the Student Technology Services Manager, which is myself. Below that, everything in yellow is actually student employees. So I have student employees that are in lead positions here. They're returning students that have received some extra training, and they have students below them that are in small sections of teams. They all have similar responsibilities for providing support around the ITS Help Desk, but then they have some extra focuses that either meet their major or their interests or their skills that they bring. And then over to the side we have our Help Desk full-time staff. We have 3 phone analysts and a manager who takes care of them. So a lot of the information we're going to go over today is also around a survey that I completed last year of 200 IT student alumni. So these were student employees that worked in public, private, and community colleges all across the United States. They've gone on to careers in IT, education, engineering, banking. It really is a wide range. And the thing that I found was that they worked in areas that were very common for my student employees or for many student employees in other institutions. So the top 5 were 80% of the people who answered the survey had done some sort of software repair, 64 computers, hardware repair. 44% of them actually managed other student employees during their time as students. So just to give you an idea of some of the numbers that I'm going to throw out as we go along, this is the profile of the people that we're talking about. So I do have to offer a little bit of clarification. Department experts, really, Mark, you're expecting that a student employee is going to be able to run my department? Well, when I do say that, I know it seems like a really tall order, like I'm Billy Mays trying to sell you the instant employee, with the Snuggie sold separately, of course. But student employees are a great resource to have, and they really do become experts in your department. Part of that is because schools are picking smarter and smarter students each year. I read an article last week in the New York Times that was interviewing admissions counselors, and they were talking about how tough things have gotten in the last even just decade. They're talking about a student that had a 3.95 unweighted grade point average, 2,300 on their SAT, had perfect 800s on the subject tests in math and chemistry, a score of 5 on 5 advanced placement exams. He had musical talent, had amazing essays, and he still didn't get into UC Berkeley. So trying to give you an idea of when you have student employees there, they were the cream of the crop in their group, and now they're with a lot of other people that are also just as smart, if not smarter than them. So the caliber of the student employees that you can get, if you look in the right places, can be amazing. Also, all these students are digital natives, and if you haven't heard that term, it gets thrown around a lot anymore. It's just the generation that has grown up with technology. The next generation is especially scary. My boss has a daughter who's not even 2 yet, but if you hand her an iPad, she knows exactly how to unlock it and find her favorite games. Her new favorite game is actually if you press and hold the icons until they start to wiggle, then she'll delete all of Daddy's apps. I think she's trying to add her room for Where's My Water. But with that kind of skill, they have a lot that they can bring to your department. And the other thing is, with the job market being how it is, they all are looking for internships and real-life experience to try and make themselves look just that little bit better than their other students. Internships are practically required at USD, especially if you're in the business school. That's just one of the requirements of graduating here. And a lot of schools are starting to implement policies like that. And if you have managed the student employees, I'm sure there's been at least once or twice that someone is graduating and you've thought to yourself, are we ever going to have another Jim or Sue, another student that's able to do something like that? That's a sign that you've really got to a point where you're really relying on that student employee, which is a great thing. So there are some big differences. If this is the first time that you're put in a position to manage student employees or anybody, there are big differences between managing students and staff. We're talking about the Millennial Generation, and that's, again, another thing you'll hear about all the time, just trying to reference how this generation is different from baby boomers and Gen X before them. And the little disclaimer is I am on the edge of the Millennial Generation, but there are wide ranges even inside that. But in case you haven't really heard much about, millennials are really they're known for their participation ribbons. These are people who have been rewarded and acknowledged all the, throughout their growing up, even for sometimes the more mundane things. They've also seen a lot of people in their generation drop out from high school or college and become millionaire tech CEOs or YouTube sensations. So combine the readily available technology, those occasional stories that you hear of someone making it big, and the feeling that they all are a little bit special, and you get a very interesting generation for sure. But also because you're dealing with student employees, for many of them this is their first job, you're dealing with a lot of people who are considered eager beginners. And this is a term from Ken Blanchard and their situational leadership. It's a great thing to read up on if you're just learning about managing employees for the first time. But people who are in this directing area here, they're people that need a lot of direction and just a little bit of support because they're so excited about having a job. Everyone will go through this process as they're an employee, but especially as you become more mature as an employee, you'll jump through these sections a lot quicker. But a student employee, you're dealing with someone who, again, is really excited to have their first job often. The other thing that is a big difference is that guaranteed turnover, and that has its pros and cons for sure. People always will look at that as a con and say, well, I need to retrain people. You know, it's a constant thing because we're cycling employees. But in some ways, especially if you're a new employee, that's a positive thing. You get a chance to try a lot of different methods. You get to learn your managing style. If something doesn't stick, you know, the next year we've got a whole different group of people, and you know, you don't have that memory of, remember that time Mark screwed up 4 years ago by trying out that plan that didn't work out. You know, you'll have fresh faces and new people who aren't going to remember about those failures, which is kind of refreshing at times. And as part of that, they have about a 3-year shelf life. And the big difference is you know it and they know it. And often I think as managers, we kind of purposely try and forget that fact. And we think, oh, well, maybe we'll pick them up as full-time later. They'll be here forever. But you know, in their minds, they're starting off this job knowing that this is just a stepping stone towards something bigger and different. And if you were to go try and hire a full-time employee that knew in their mind that in 3 years they were going to go off and do something different, you would see a very different performance than from someone who thinks that they potentially could be there for the rest of their working career. So why do you want student employees? Well, affordability is always that number one that you get hear of. I mean, you can pay the minimum wage or just slightly more, but there is that big thing you need to, little asterisk on there, to make sure you factor in the price of training, that you're going to be spending a lot more time providing training for them on anything from the technical skills to the soft skills. So that does kind of inflate the price a little bit. But depending on your funding model, some work-study employees are actually no cost to your department. They're 100% paid for by the government as part of their work-study or, you know, just them going to college. You get to also participate in the educating of students, which is, you know, when it comes time that you go and fill out your evaluation, you can easily say that you're meeting the mission and vision of your university because you're helping provide and educating a population of those students. Students also bring a lot of fresh ideas. They are, as digital natives, they know this technology better than any of us, and they often have different ideas on how it can be used or how it's being actually used out in the field. They relate to your customers. The student employees can, you know, really have a quick rapport with other students. They know, again, the pains that they're experiencing. They've had the same late night sessions or, you know, losing papers last minute. And like we were talking about, that guaranteed turnover allows you to try different things. So knowing all that, why do student employees want you? Like we were talking about, it's a competitive job market. They need the experience. When we went back and surveyed those employees, that survey I was telling you about, 83% of them said that the skills they learned as student employees helped them get their first full-time job, which is a pretty strong number when you figure that you'll interview some student employees that are working for you at the time, and they say, yeah, no, it was a job on the side. It helped me get some money for fun weekends. But later they find how valuable the skills that they developed are. There also is a lot of opportunity for mentorship. Only about slightly over half of the respondents said that they had a mentor when they were a student employee. But of those, 74% said that the mentor really contributed to them getting a full-time job, that it was a very valuable resource to have. And I always ask my student employees, when on their first day, we're doing our training, we discuss in small groups, 2 questions. What makes this job different than other campus jobs, and what do you hope to get out of this job? I'll always get some great answers because they do have different reasons for being there. And it's a good chance for them to kind of realize what place they're at and what their coworkers' place is. But it's great to see that they're all kind of finding a lot of value here other than just I'm collecting a paycheck.
Hey, Mark, it's Beth. We do have a question. Could you further explain what a mentor does?
Okay, so a mentor can do a lot of different things depending on what the need of a mentee is. So it's interesting because we're actually running a SIGOX mentoring program here. That's part of how I know Beth is that she's on the advisory board for it. But a mentor really is just there to, well, I'm trying to think how to best explain this. A mentor is there to provide that kind of maybe guidance and support for somebody who's new to either a position or a experience. So in the case of student employees, the mentors are kind of helping them make sure that they're learning how to set goals, that they're meeting the expectations of their jobs, that they're trying to help them stretch and learn more things and get the most out of their position here. When you go on to a full-time job later, maybe you're finding mentors that either have the skills or expertise that you're looking to try and build yourself. They can point you towards resources, or again, are trying to help you learn how to goal set, learn how to become a better employee or a better person. And they're great people to be as sounding boards even later on in life, or hey, this is a situation that I have now, I'm wondering what I should do, and they can help provide you their sometimes their experience or their insight. Sometimes they just say, here's the, what I would do, or here what are some resources that you can kind of look at. So a bit convoluted of an answer, but I hope that kind of helps paint the picture. So kind of going forward on that, we talked about why we want student employees and what benefit, we want to talk about kind of some of the processes that we go through to get them on board and kind of go through the life cycle of a student employee at your university. So hiring, of course, is the first one. A lot of different ways to do this for sure, and you want to make sure that it's meeting the needs of your department. There are certain HR requirements you need to make sure that you're following, but you also need to make sure that you're, again, if there's any sort of administrative requirements or things that you want to look for in your employees, that you're meeting those. Meet with your hires over in HR. They've got a lot of resources that can help you out if you're hiring for the first time. There's also often student career centers on campus that can give you a little bit of insight into what other managers of student employees are doing, or what are some of the requirements for hiring for work study or international students who can only work a certain amount of hours a week. Don't limit yourself to recruiting to certain majors. I found that, like I said, a lot of my school is business and liberal arts, so it's not that traditional CS major engineering student that you would expect you'd hire in the IT department. But we've had some amazing student employees that come out of areas that you wouldn't expect for sure. They bring a lot of different skills that really can benefit your group. Group interviews really do help with student employees. It gives you a chance to see how well they work together as a team. We do a lot of our hiring for that move-in weekend, where we're expecting these 45 new student employees to be working together to provide support for 2,000 students as they come onto campus over that weekend. So it's a lot of teamwork, a lot of communication, and getting them to show that in a group interview gives you a chance to really see which ones shine and which ones don't. Individual interviews are always great. That's an experience that many people don't, students haven't had that experience yet. Sometimes it's their first interview ever and they don't know what to expect. I've had students dress in anything from a tuxedo to ripped up t-shirts and shorts. I've had them blurt out of turn or not know what to do, but later they still end up being great employees if they get that chance. So that's one thing you want to make sure that you're doing is, if someone doesn't make it, provide them that feedback if they ask. Let them know what they can do to be better, and encourage them to come back and apply that next semester. There's a lot of growth that student employees will have over the years that they're here at the university. And even just in 6 months, I've seen people who I said, no, you're not ready for this yet, come back. They've come back later and been amazing employees. When I'm hiring as well, I do try and focus on the customer service skills. I always tell my student employees who are helping with the hiring that we could teach them the tech stuff, but it was their parents' responsibility to teach them how to work with people. And it saves you a lot of trouble than hiring somebody who's maybe got some great technical skills, but just is awful to employ or to the students. So it's benefited us for sure. So we've hired our employees, and we want to try and bring them on board to our culture, make sure that they learn all the skills that they need to work in the ITS help desk. So what does that look like? So you want to make sure that from the get-go that the culture of your IT department and the goals of your department are very clear. And when we're talking about culture, we're talking about everything from, is it a fun and lively office to a quiet, solitary office, to is it a culture of helping each other in collaboration, or is it very hierarchical? Every department is a little bit different. You want to make sure that they're not kind of really going against the grain on that. It's not kind of the fight that you want to have necessarily. And make sure that when you are onboarding new employees that you're not glossing over policies and thinking that they already know them. I've had to remind student employees that no, you shouldn't wear sunglasses inside the office, and yes, you should call me when you're going to be late or you're not feeling well, and yes, you should wear shoes at work. Those things I would think everyone should know, I take for granted, but for a lot of people, like I said, this is their first job, so they don't know some of these things. It's often good to spell it out in a document they can go read later, but we've also found sometimes that acting out skits on good policy, bad policy will kind of help bring that point across. Sometimes it's even been I just sit down with them and we go page by page, and it's really boring, but at least we can all say we all have read it, we all know it. And make sure that you're involving other people from IT, from your community, to try and help educate the student employees. There's a whole, it takes a village comment, that it takes everybody to try and help bring these student employees on board. It's got two benefits. One of them is that they get to build rapport with other people in IT that they wouldn't work with on a day-to-day basis. They get to maybe use them later for references, or they get to know who's on the other line of when they're calling about a problem with your portal or with your email. Building that rapport goes a long way. But they also just bring a lot of different soft skills and technical skills that they could share with the students, and they're often very excited to do so. The photo I have here is actually one of our activities that we do on our first full day of training for semester employees as a scavenger hunt. We'll send them out into the community to go and meet with different businesses that actually will show great customer service skills. And so this was, they just basically surprised this Starbucks employee with a lot of questions, and she was of course amazing at answering them about the Starbucks culture and how they make sure that every customer feels that they're special and well listened to. And honestly, I didn't call them in advance and say, hey, can we organize this? Can I have some students come later? That's just part of how amazing some of these companies are. So they've got a lot of resources online. Look for the companies that are saying that they pride themselves on their customer service, the Nordstroms, the Marriotts, the Starbucks. Send your student employees to go and talk with them for a few minutes, and they'll learn quite a bit. So what do I do for my onboarding? This is my schedule for my student employees when they're starting for move-in weekend. It's 2.5 days of pretty intense training, but you'll see here that maybe about half of it is technical. The other half is team building, is those policies and procedures, is those customer service skills. So we spend our evening, we do a barbecue and a scavenger hunt with our ITS team, so they get a chance again to meet them, get the ITS team to get out of their office for a little while and learn a little bit about what the students are doing this year. We spend 45 minutes with our students all in one big circle doing what we just simply call the name game. The first employee says, hey, my name is Mark, and something interesting about me is I've never been to Mexico. And then the second person has to say, this is Mark, has never been to Mexico, my name is Jim, and I've been to 5 continents. And then the third person has to say about Mark, and then Jim, and then something interesting about herself. And it goes all the way around to the point where I do have one poor student employee who has to remember what 44 student employees before them, their name and something interesting about them. And like I said, it takes 45 minutes. It, at the time, sometimes feels like a ridiculous activity, but they get to really kind of learn a bit about their coworkers. They build that rapport, and if I go out there now, a year later, and ask my student employees what was the thing that they said during the name game, they can point to the different people in the room and say, oh, he likes to rock climb, or she loves to travel. And so it's been incredibly valuable for building that team. We still use the fish. Yes?
Oh, Mark, just a couple questions, too, that you can clarify on the slide.
Okay.
How long is each training session each day? If you can make sure you just kind of discuss that. And also, are returning employees involved in this training, or is this just for your new people?
Okay. Both very good questions. So our Wednesday training is about 2 hours, and that's including eating food and that scavenger hunt. Our Thursday and Friday, we go from 9 to 5. And that seems to, again, we're not covering maybe everything. We try and give them the resources that they need for that move-in weekend, but there gets to a point where it's diminishing returns. We spend any more time trying to cram technical skills into them before move-in weekend. They just pick it up as well. I do actually require that all of my returners go back through this training. They kind of serve as dual purpose. One is it's a refresher for them, but we also try and find opportunities where they could share with the new student employees and kind of help mentor them. Even if they're not in a lead position, they can still, bring a lot and be a good resource for them. So some of these activities that we're looking at on here, the icebreakers I'll have run by my student employees, my leads that are there, or maybe some of my returners. You'll see in some of the technical ones, we have this obstacle course. And the obstacle course is actually, I'll have a couple of my techs who really have those technical skills and they love to kind of show off. They go and they break 10 computers on different things that they think you'll see over the weekend. Everything from the wireless switches off on the computer to they'll just delete a couple of DLLs on the computer just to have it blue screen on them. And then the new student employees have 45 minutes to, as a group, solve each one and kind of learn the different things. The DLL one is really for them to learn the lesson that you can't fix everything out in the field, and that time you need to refer them back to the office. So there's a role for them for sure, so that they're not feeling bored as you're going through policies for some of them the third time. So just kind of keep that in mind if you do have returners, but I would definitely recommend it. So a couple other things that we do. We do a lot of rotations. It's a chance for people to get into smaller groups. They feel like they can ask more questions. They can kind of tailor the training to be what they kind of, those specific people need. We'll go over, one section will be all about Windows wireless support. Another will be about Macs. Because of the proliferation of iPads and iPhones, we'll often have one group that's just purely mobile devices. Take 2 or 3 minutes to go over some of the gaming consoles. One of the things I would recommend anybody that's doing an onboarding training is be a little flexible as you learn your group. One of the activities I've added that's now become permanent to my training was just something that kind of I added in on the whim because I found that the group that I hired that year, for whatever reason, was just a little bit quieter when it came to talking with strangers. They, once they warmed up to it, they felt okay, but I was sitting there on Thursday afternoon going, how are they going to approach a whole bunch of new students and their parents and ask them if they need any help and be outgoing for, based on what I've seen today. So we did an activity called One Red Paperclip, and it's worth looking up if you've never heard of it. It was a guy maybe about, 6 or 8 years ago who had a red paperclip, and he decided that he wanted to trade up and get to the point where he had a house. So he found someone online and he traded that red paperclip for some old pen, and then that got traded for like a doorknob. And like I said, as it got more attention, as it it spread across the world, he got a lot of interest in it, and he was able to trade up to a snowmobile, to a speaking gig on a movie, to it was just pretty amazing to hear. So I made them watch that video, and then I gave them all a paperclip, and they went as pairs around the university and just found what could they trade up for in 2 hours. We did this kind of over their lunch period. Then they came back and they shared their experience. So it kind of put them out on the spot. They had to go and talk to strangers and see what they could do to get rid of this paperclip. And I've had students come back in 2 hours with just amazing things. One student came back with an older laptop computer. One came back with 2 textbooks that were worth $250. One came back with silt from Antarctica that a researcher had been writing a paper on, and the paper to go with it. So we've now fondly called it our chance to clean out our office, because they'll come around and they'll ask us to, even though we're in IT. We encourage them to go to other places on campus, but we get to kind of get rid of some of those little doodads we get from conferences. But it's just been very valuable over the years for getting people who really are kind of feeling a little shy about talking to strangers to be a bit more outgoing. So I'll gladly share this later with anybody who wants to know about some of these specifics. We've got still a bit to cover, and I want to make sure we get to answer some questions too. So once we've had our student employees go through their onboarding, they've done their move-in weekend, we've hired them for the semester, we do want to make sure that that training is ongoing. I've done a lot of different things over the years, but you want to make sure that everyone kind of has that base knowledge, so that at least the problems they come in for every day, or knowing how to use your ticketing system, or how to route calls, that everyone is at that base level. And you want to make sure that it's, if possible, you encourage that they cross-train with other areas. And that could be either student employees that know this a little bit better, or your full-time staff in your help desk or desktop support, but even in your web team, your learning management system team, your server administrators, that they're getting a chance to learn a little bit from them if it's appropriate. You kind of have to decide too. There have been two major ways that I've seen that you can do ongoing training and employee development. You can do very structured assignments. We've done that for a few years, where every week our one-year employees had one thing they needed to complete. It took anywhere between 15 minutes to an hour and a half for them to do. They were paid to do it. We encouraged them to do that in between their phone calls. And they were anything from doing getting their FERPA certification, or learning how to remove a hard drive and do a backup of it, or running Dell Diagnostic. The benefit of that is, by the end of the year, everybody definitely knew all those things. The other downside was sometimes you're learning things in April that you needed back in October. So we've tried to do something that was a little more semi-directed. We called it the Achievements Program. I was calling it the like the Boy Scout merit badges, and then I was quickly corrected. Oh, you mean like Xbox 360 achievements? I'm like, yes, that's what I meant. So what we did was we had a certain things that everyone was required to learn, and then while meeting with their leader, myself, we tried to help guide them into areas that they could learn that would be a little bit more beneficial for them, and they could kind of focus on an area. So I've got someone who is addicted to Android devices. He is always buying the latest and greatest one and selling off the last one, and he is our resident expert when it comes to them. So why not encourage him to learn more about it, present to the team, and become a resident expert? And then when questions come up that are, how do I set up an exchange mail on Android 4.2.2? Oh, Scott's working. I can go and learn a little bit from him. And then he's training the other students as well. I mean, you want to make sure that you're helping people in either way you do this, that they're playing to their strengths. A lot of my training is actually done by my student employees. My best trainers have been, the education majors, communication majors, people who served as tutors. Those are great things to look for on resumes when you're looking for people to hire. But if you just watch people as they're helping with customers, did they take the extra time to explain a foreign concept to someone? Do they answer questions that seem like tangents but then relate them back to the discussion? Do they seem energized by helping somebody learn something? Those are the people you want to make sure you identify right away and say, hey, I want you to help out in doing this training. And keep them as long as you can, because they're a valuable resource. So I was talking about, and I'll share this with you as well because there's a lot on here, for our Achievements Program that we started last year, we're refining for this year. These are for the basic things that everyone has to do, and we kind of tried to break them up. So, data security, they have to go take that FERPA quiz. They have to do a small training on what things they do for password resets. They have to do a little quiz that makes sure that they know what's going on. For basic phones, they have to do 5 phone calls with assistants and then 5 phone calls on their own and tickets to prove it. We go through and a lead will kind of audit some of those and just say, yeah, you did great on this, or here's some coaching notes I would say for next time. Once students have gone through, we have 5 basic achievements they have to do. Then we start meeting with them and saying, okay, what are the areas you want to learn more on, and try and guide them towards those discussions. So I'll make sure that these are available in case you're interested in them. So your student employees, you've got them all oriented, you've got them doing some ongoing training. You need to make sure that you're evaluating them and sharing with them the progress that they're making. So the evaluations are incredibly critical for them. Different departments, different universities don't, many of them won't require that you do evaluations for your students, but it's really beneficial for doing it. I would really recommend. We actually do our evaluations twice a semester, which, when it comes to be that week, I really kind of hate it, but it is really worthwhile. Our first one in the middle of the semester is completely unofficial. We just we share with them what's going on, what they're doing well, where they can improve. And when we're all done, we hand them all the content and say, all right, that's yours. You can put it on the fridge. You can burn it. You can do whatever you want, but it's not official yet. And then when we meet at the end of the semester, we'll cover the whole semester, and that's going to be what goes in their employee folder. That'll be what we use for potential raises or letters of recommendation. Having evaluations means that you set clear expectations and make sure that there's no surprises. I tell all my student employees when they come and sit down for evaluation that nothing we cover should be a surprise to you. These should be things that I've talked with you about, the student leads have talked with you about. We're just kind of reaffirming them. Maybe if it's something that needs to be improved, we're coming up with a plan for making changes. Try and include feedback from your student leaders, your peers, or the student peers, because they will often see a different side of the student employee than when you're around. Plus, it also allows them to feel like they're contributing to the growth of the student employees. And if it's possible for your organization, have the students run the evaluations. Having my leads there, being the ones telling them, hey, here's where you could improve, here's where you're doing great, is a great experience for them, and also means that they're able to bring examples and talk about things that, again, maybe you haven't seen, but they're working on the floor more often with these student employees. It's really been a great experience for my leads, and I have just as good, if not better, evaluations because of that. So what I do for my evaluations is actually a rubric. I started this years ago. It's something that we were doing at Washington State University. And it allows me to do a couple different things. One, I can speak in a language they know. We're talking grades, so an A or a B or a C in different areas. It also allows me to hand them the sheet, and when they're first trying to do their evaluation, I say, just highlight the phrases that you feel apply to you. And then on the other side, you could talk about the examples of that, the deliverables. It helps them kind of craft a little bit better of evaluation, which helps me in case we're seeing something that's different. Also helps them know what things should go in those open-ended evaluations they'll have as full-time staff. So they do a self-evaluation, I do an evaluation, or my lead will do an evaluation, and the evaluation then is really spent just comparing. If both you or your lead and the student employee agree that they're doing great on something, maybe their job knowledge is really strong as an A, you can kind of gloss over that. You can thank them, encourage them to learn some more, but you don't need to spend a lot of time talking about it. If you and them agree that they're a C in something, again, you don't have to spend as much time talking about it because you both know where they're at. You can spend that time talking about, well, where do you go to move yourself out of that C category into the B or the A? It's when you see a big disconnect, that means you have a long conversation ahead of you, trying to see where are they getting this idea that they know everything when they've been working for you for 3 months and they're still having problems filling out tickets appropriately. Those are the times where you have to have that hard discussion, but it's a valuable one for sure. I also let all my student employees know that you're not going to get A's in everything. Like I said about this group, they're the cream of the crop in their high school. They're expecting that they're going to excel at everything that they do, and sometimes it's a little bit of a surprise that they're not doing amazing at their job the first time that they try this. So, we set some of these things in the A category as really high expectations so that they have something to strive for. And with any student employee job, you want to make sure you keep it memorable. I love this photo because as part of their scavenger hunt, I sent them to the carousel, and they just had to go ride the carousel and have fun at their job. And this was a photo of Josh trying to look as serious and cool as he could while riding a giraffe. But if you're trying to think of ways to make the job memorable for your student employees, just ask yourself, what would I, as a staff member, appreciate as recognition? And then, ultimately you start cutting out things. You're like, well, I can't exactly do that. I can't give them raises to $20 an hour, but maybe there are other things that I could do to show that I appreciate them with food, with activities. And then what are the positive things about your job that when you're excited that it happens that day, you go and you share with your family and friends. So those are the kind of things that help frame your mind when you're starting to come up with ideas for making your student employee job memorable. And it's important for sure. We've done a couple of different things to try and make working as a student employee memorable. Some of these things are quick little activities that have, they'll talk about years in that still kind of had some benefit to the department. So one of these photos is actually where they have the cardboard tubes. That was May the 4th. That was when my student employees wanted to celebrate on May 4th is May the 4th be with you. It's the Star Wars Day. And so we bought some tubes for about 20 bucks and spray painted them, invited some of our system administrators to come, and we had a lightsaber battle out on the patio. It was about 20 people. It was a great team building thing. It took us about 20 minutes, and that was the end. But they keep talking about that one. I'll get my full-time staff members involved wherever I can so that they're building human pyramids during their scavenger hunts. Or the photo down here was from that one red paperclip activity. This was a department that has nothing to do with us, but they were all excited about the fact they were getting to meet some people in IT and participate in this activity that they all posed for that photo of what they were creating. We've also had teams for Relay for Life that have been, after one of our student employees passed away from cancer, a chance for them to kind of rally behind the student and that family. And then, of course, if you can't think of anything, food is always a great way to help make the job memorable and make it fun, too. And then when your student employees are finally, it's time for them to graduate and move on, before they do that, you want to make sure they're passing off that knowledge. If they get a chance to educate the new employees, it saves you the trouble of having to retrain them all from scratch every year. It's a great thing for your leads to be able to hand that off. Sometimes it's a physical book that says, here are the things you need to know for running some of the marketing at the ITS Help Desk, but then here's some of the tribal knowledge that maybe hasn't been documented yet. It also encourages them to cross-train, and anyone that wants to be a lead, then we say, all right, you need to go spend 10 hours with this other lead learning about what it's like to be a lead here at the ITS Help Desk. And then once they've left, definitely don't lose track of them. Your alumni are a great power to have. Find ways to stay connected with them. LinkedIn groups are great. We have one for all of our former student employees, and this was even back before I was here, so that it serves as a job board. If we know of any jobs for people who are recent graduates, or it could be a good resource for people that are looking for positions right after they leave the university, I encourage my alumni to go share on that board so that we can try and place them into positions that will be good. But you can even do this through Facebook groups or email mailing lists later. And encourage your student employees to interact with them. We will sometimes have some of our alumni come back and speak during a training for just 10 minutes about where they're at now and what experiences as student employees they want to make sure that they, that they wish they could have done yet. So where do you get started? Identify any tasks or projects that your department needs to be able to complete. Don't ask yourself, what work can a student do? You're really going to kind of limit yourself to just things that are, kind of the basic activities. Ask more, what work needs to be done, and then see if you can get student employees that can fill that experience. Don't limit your imagination, and don't limit your students' imagination. They can often rise up very quickly to some great possibilities. And then, keep from losing that knowledge when students graduate. Make documentation and shadowing part of the job requirements, part of the culture that they're, you'll sometimes find those IT employees that feel that they have all the power when they don't tell anybody things. Make sure that that's not your culture. Make sure that you're finding ways that you're encouraging people to share that knowledge with others and to document things. And then remember, finally, what skills alumni want. As part of that poll, I asked them, what did they wish they had learned when they were student employees? And these are the top things. You can see at the bottom that they were predominantly soft skills. Over half of the people wish they had been able to do some basic project management. So get them involved in a project, even if it's just a student-related one, that you need to redo your knowledge base, and we need someone to try and manage handing out those assignments and keeping track of the project. Or leading a group or a department, or leading other employees, or running training courses. Again, you don't have to look at this list and say, well, I can't have my student employees run my Luminous upgrade project. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But getting them involved in just some basic project management or some basic leadership or management duties is going to go a long way for them. So we're getting close to out of time. Hopefully you have a minute or two for some questions, but thank you all for attending. I will try and make sure that these slides and a lot of these resources I talked about are posted on this site at the end of the day. I believe Beth is also going to try and make sure that this recorded presentation is available for you later. If I were to recommend two books, The Power of Habit and Made to Stick have a lot of great resources that can relate to managing any sort of employee, but especially works when you have student employees that you're talking about. So what do we got, Beth?
Let's see. We have one question about the group interview process. Could you go into a little bit more specifics of what exactly they do and how the students are given the chance to shine in this type of interview?
So with my group interview process, again, I'm hiring for people who are going to show great teamwork skills and communication skills. I'm not going to be asking them those crazy technical questions. So what we do is we have kind of a scenario. It takes about 45 minutes. We'll have anywhere between 4 and 7 applicants that participate in it. And we modify it every year just a little bit, but this year we have the Indiana Jones theme for our move-in weekend. We have Indiana Jones themed shirts, and I think some of them are going to strap Cat 5 cables to their belts. So we wanted to kind of bring that into our group interview. So they were on a quest to find the Holy Grail. So at the beginning of it, they just had to, as a team, think of 5 things that they would need to make sure they brought on this quest. So they just brainstormed as a small group. So you got a chance to see who are the people who are speaking up, who are the ones that are kind of sitting back or not contributing to the group, who are the ones that kind of think of those crazy off-the-wall ideas. And then when it was time for them to share, who are the ones that felt comfortable talking in front of that group, and who are the ones that helped get their point across. Then we went into different activities. At one point, they actually have to build a Tinker Toy tower that's taller than the tallest employee, because they have to, I think we said there was to scale a wall to escape the cave, whatever the reason was. The activity themselves, the actual building of the tower, we don't really care about their architecture skills, but as they're doing that, we can see who are the people that are hoarding the pieces, or who are the ones that are encouraging others. Oh, that's a great idea. We should get that involved. And then if we do find that there's somebody who's kind of commanding the group that's serving as a great leader, we try and find ways to take them out of that. So if there's someone that's giving orders to the rest of the group and the other people aren't getting a chance to be leaders, we say, all right, Jim, you've got some virus that was in the cave and you can't talk. And so then we see who else goes and rises up and starts to talk instead. So we adjust that as we go along, just so we can get a chance for other people to either bring out their skills. Maybe they're trying to sit back because they find that there's a leader there, but if there's not, they can rise into that leadership position. Or sometimes it'll just be painfully quiet, or nothing will be accomplished during that minute or two, and we'll say, all right, you've been cured, you can talk again. So you kind of want to just look at what soft skills you want to make sure that you're looking for, and then find fun and inventive ways to measure those and bring those out. So that's how we've done it over the years.
Thanks, Mark. Gail, I just unmuted you. Do you have a question? I see Gail has her hand raised. All right, maybe not.
Okay.
We do have another question. How do you deal with people who cannot attend training?
So, that kind of depends. If it's a new student employee that's here for Net Week and you can't attend the training for those 3 days, sorry, you can't be an employee. That's kind of a requirement. We do our monthly trainings throughout the year, and we set that schedule even before school starts, so that there should be little reason that they can't attend training. But they can't attend those 2-hour trainings. It kind of depends on the situation. If there's some of my returners that know this well, then maybe we'll say, meet with this other lead for a half hour so you can get the material that you need. Or, at times I've had to set up alternative trainings. There was one year a lot of my students were in the business fraternity, and they had a big event that night that was conflicting. And so I said, all right, the 8 of you can skip training, but we're doing a makeup training next week during lunch, so you need to make sure that you're there instead. So, there are a lot of different ways to accomplish that. One other thing that you should just look at is how do you leverage other training opportunities or resources that you have on campus. If you have the ability to record classes, maybe you record some of your trainings and make those available for people that couldn't make it. Or you use your learning management system to have some guided quizzes or discussion or the ability to submit assignments in there so that you're not having to meet with them as often. I would definitely encourage that you do meet, but maybe even save those times for team building activities or going over policies and save some of the technical stuff for more the one-on-one. Kind of depends on the group.
Great, thank you. And how often and how many people do you typically hire each semester?
Each semester, I usually hire between 20 to 25 people for what we call our move-in weekend is Net Week. So we'll have between 40 and 45 student employees that are working for me at that time. And the position has a definite end date. And we say, look, part of this position is that you get to move in early, you get paid training and some food, and you're helping the new people that are moving in so that they can get their technology online. And then it's, in a way, because the group interview, we didn't get a chance to talk with them one-on-one, it's almost like an extended interview for us. So the people who are really excelling during Net Week, we're encouraging them, hey, apply to stay for the semester, become one of our semester employees. The ones that maybe they find is not a good fit, they don't fit our culture, or they find that they're still a little scared about some of the tech stuff, then they're often not going to apply themselves, and then they'll end up leaving after the move-in weekend. So that's how we keep our semester employees, and it kind of depends on the year and what the requirements are of the group, but we'll sometimes have up to 30 student employees. Sometimes we'll have that down to 20.
Great, thank you. Mark, we have about 4 questions, so we'll just kind of keep rolling on through. A follow-up question about the mentoring. Is there a difference between one-on-one training and mentoring in your mind? And or does the supervisor directly mentor their employees, or is there mentoring happening that is not quite such a one-on-one kind of power relationship?
So there's a couple different questions in there. Well, training and mentoring, well, they have some overlap. Let's think of it kind of as a Venn diagram. They both kind of have their different reasons. So often in training, you're covering the skills that you need to succeed in this job. And often they're either technical or they're policies, procedures, and some of those soft skills that we were talking about. The mentoring ones really are focusing on the soft skills, or maybe trying to help them build the timeline and the goals that they need to develop those hard skills. Often when I think of mentoring, I don't think of having a student employee that's learning how to bring a server online. That's training, that's not mentoring. And if we have the ability to find that resource, then we should. But the mentoring is more of how do they set goals, how do they get an idea of what their strengths are and how they want to play to them. It's kind of serving as an extension of a little bit of career counseling and a little bit of life counseling, I guess. In the past, when I've done full mentoring programs with my student employees, I've tried to avoid being the mentor myself. It's because sometimes I guess I serve as a mentor in a different sort of way. If I find that somebody's maybe lacking in some soft skills or they're having some problems that are affecting their work, I'll pull them aside and coach them and try and help them on that. I've had one of my leads that was great with customer service was horrible with time management, and we were setting up weekly meetings to just, what are your expectations for the next month, and what things do you need to make sure that you're prioritizing? But he had actually we had a different mentor for him that he wasn't going to the mentor meetings because he had the time management problems. So what I've done actually in some ways, this has had varying success, but I've had some of my lead service mentors to the new employees because they're focusing on some of the very basic stuff. Again, just what is a goal and how do you make it a smart goal, and what are some possibilities that you have here at the ITS Help Desk. Then my leads, I actually tried to partner them up with other people in IT that weren't direct managers of theirs. So I found that they maybe had a common interest because, one of my student employees wanted to go into web development. I found someone that was in the web development area, but I told them, this discussion, well, that might be something you could fall back on. You're really going to focus on these goal setting and this, again, those soft skills, and try and help them become better employees and get a better idea of what they want to do.
Great. So quick question. So 3 questions. We got about 5 minutes left. So
Okay.
is your primary job student training management, or do you work in customer service and support as well? And if so, what percentage do you use for student management? What percentage of your time?
Well, my primary job is managing those student employees, but I do serve as their backup in that student support. So I'm often representing the student support in meetings with housing, with IT. So that kind of pulls me away from that day-to-day managing. And I find that percentage, honestly, this is a cop-out answer, but it changes throughout the year. When my new student employees are there, I'm spending a lot more time on that floor directly managing and supporting them. When it comes to be summertime and my student employees have been here for a year, they've got their own projects they're working on, I find myself spending even less and less time. It's more of that guiding. It kind of goes back to that situational leadership, that the amount of attention I need to focus on, they're managing them kind of relates to where they're at in that leadership cycle.
Great. What and how do you manage the consequences for not meeting expectations? For example, what happens if someone doesn't show up for work?
Showing up for work is actually one of the easiest ones because that's one of those base things that we expect everyone is communicating with us. That one's a lot easier to set consequences for than maybe filling out tickets that are unclear, because that could just be a skill that maybe they haven't built yet. So attendance, we actually adopted this, is what our labs were doing, that they have a 3-strike policy. That the first time that they, if there's something that comes up, if they're sick or something, we expect that they're calling us right away, preferably before that shift starts, but required within the first 30 minutes of that shift starting. And it's up to sometimes the leads, but often myself, to give that discretion of, this is an excused absence, or this is something that's not excused. But 3 not excused late or absent to their shifts in a semester means that they're let go. We'll give them a verbal warning the first time. The second time we sit down with them, we have a written warning. And then that third time, I'm sorry. And we'll adjust that sometimes if we need. That's just what we have published in our guide. We try and make sure that's very clear. And as part of that discussion, especially when we're sitting down with them and they're at their written warning, then we're trying to find ways that we can help them succeed. The problem is your alarm's not working, I'll go buy you an alarm if we need. I want to make sure that you're able to get to work and succeed. And I should correct that. We often will have one other step in there to where it's more of a 4-step process. I will often, unless it's some blatant thing where they just said, no, I just didn't feel like coming to work, we'll do a 1-day suspension in there as a 3rd step before they're terminated. So that kind of helps hammer the point home.
Great. And last but not least, how much do you pay your students, and how does it compare to the rest of campus?
So my students will start at $8.50 an hour when they are doing that week, when they're working that move-in weekend. Now you got to figure out, I'm in California, so minimum wage was something like $7.93 an hour. So we're not talking much more than minimum wage. Students that are here for the semester will go between $9 and $9.50 an hour, and my leads are between $10 and $10.75 an hour. I have a flyer that's on my board that constantly reminds me that it was when they're building a new In-N-Out, and their position started at $10 an hour. So I actually pay less than the fast food restaurants around here. So that's where part of what I try and make sure that even when we're first having that discussion with the student employees is that they know there's a lot more that you're going to get from this than just wages. And I have a little bit of a benefit just because it's a private university. Many of the students that are here aren't working here because they need the money. There are a few, and we find ways that they can get some extra hours, and there'll often be some of them that rise up in the ranks because they just need that raise. But for many of them, it's a little bit extra spending money, but they're doing this more for the experience, for the line items on their resume. So, you might find that it's different. I've worked at Washington State University before, and The pay is a lot more of a concern. It's just kind of a subset.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm afraid we are out of time. I hope everyone's enjoyed this webinar. I know at least I've taken a few tips and tricks away from some of the ideas that Mark has shared. As we mentioned earlier, this is recorded, so we hope to have it available on our website in the next few days. And Mark, if you can give me the PowerPoint slideshow as well, there was some information in there I know people are interested in having.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Mark is more than willing to take any direct emails, and if you want to see more webinars like this, just send me an email and let me know. And finally, I hope you can register for the SIGUX 2013 conference. It's going to be in Chicago from November 3rd through 8th. And this is just a hint of some of the types of discussions that go on at that conference. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.